for other people. And, just getting prepared for this presentation, I upped my game from a couple of years ago. And so just Googling self-improvement and getting into scholarly articles, like I said, there's more books versus articles to help us improve upon ourselves. So we as humans have been working on improving ourselves throughout history. The first known looking and documented is the Stoic philosophy back in I think the Stoic philosophy began in 300 BC by a guy named Zeno. And he was introduced to other ways of thinking and other perspectives of life. So his tragic shipwreck, he ended up improving his life and becoming more wealthy merchant. But one of the classic Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, from 135 AD, wrote a book called The Art of Living. And it is a classical manual on virtue, happiness, and effectiveness. And it's a book of 93 different instructions for our advice on living a happier life. The Stoics are people who were self-help concepts, and they wanted, so all of their advice and their philosophy was to help us become more resilient, happier, and virtuous and wise, which really can transfer over into our lives as individuals, as parents, and professionals. So there's so many aspects to work with. Another well-known Stoic philosopher was Marcus Aurelius, and he was highly influenced by Epictetus. Marcus Aurelius was, a Roman emperor. He was, in his book, Meditations, was a self-help guide and instructions to himself while he was on military campaigns. So those two books are really some of the older books that we are now using. They've had this revival. So you might want to investigate The Art of Living and those Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So the Stoic philosophy of how to improve yourself has influenced several of our presidents in the United States. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, even Theodore Roosevelt really studied these Stoic philosophies and trying to improve themselves. We have a lot of current, in the earliest known that's really famous is Norman Vincent Peale in 1952. He wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, which started a whole different movement in our psychology and self-help work. So he was like a new founder in bringing forth how to improve ourselves. Stephen R. Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in 1989, is another one of those bestseller books to help us to start working and become that more effective person that we want to be. So playing around on Google and looking at, self-improvement, the top hits are these blogs and just these inspirational and motivational speakers. James Clear, who has written some bestseller books, he instructs people who are his followers to read Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. So it was kind of like, wow, his basis and influence came from there. And Tony Robbins is another life coach who's out there in our world motivating and helping people to work on themselves. There's the website Life Hack, and then numerous different websites for personal development coaches. People are calling themselves growth coaches. We have empowerment or mindset coaches. So truly, we have at our fingertips on our internet and within, the lovely hardbound book on so many resources on how to improve ourselves. And if anybody who wants to kind of make comments and things, please speak up. But in behavioral health, we really work on this. This is called the wellness wheel. It's kind of the core tool of the components that make up a well-balanced person. And so when we look at our physical and mental, our whole aspects of this wheel, we look at any one of those areas as being a place where we could make improvements. I think self-improvement is that awareness of where we may not be meeting our personal expectations. We may notice, even through looking at this little wellness wheel, areas that we may feel out of balance in. So we can look at different aspects. You may have a job, your occupation and your financial intake may be perfectly comfortable for you and you're very satisfied with that part of our life. And yet, especially in this day and age with our, pandemic and our society kind of shutting down for our health, and preservation, is we may notice really that our social life is really kind of off balance right now, which may throw that emotional portion of our life out of balance. Our physical well-being, you may have been a person who goes to the gym, and so now we're having to look at different ways to utilize these tools. So the other part of our emotion wheel, like this is just a core sampling, but there are many different philosophies and different perspectives that have many different subcategories within each one of these little portions that those powers out in our world see that make us a whole and well-balanced person. So, as a recreation therapist, I thought it might be fun to just quote, improve our game. You look at recreation therapy. I don't know how many of you know what recreation therapy is, but we utilize recreation and leisure interventions to help people gain through their social, their physical, their intellectual, and spiritual well-being. So our profession works with people of all abilities to either learn new skills and new leisure aspects, or we just may be looking at regaining if we have lost our abilities. People get brand new knees and shoulders or back surgeries. Thus my lovely slideshow of that personal trainer in golf. So we help people regain and relearn through those skills. Other leisure aspects, like, maybe we've always wanted to learn to play a musical instrument. So, being able to investigate what leisure interests you may have to steer you in that direction. And I love this little personal coach in the exercise world, because when you look at our leisure activities, there has been coaching, there has been teachers, we even have like teammates or, other support people who help us improve our game. So when we look at being on a team, or, we have different life experiences, maybe you've never been to a live concert and you think, wow, I really love a different musical instrument, and you want to improve your skills. So life experiences teach us introduce us to different modalities or different activities, and it also teaches us different perceptions of how to look at what we're doing and how we could, well, improve ourselves. Moving on. So the benefits of self-improvement. It increases our self-awareness. Building self-awareness is that very big mindfulness piece. It brings us to knowing ourselves, knowing all our personality traits. It's where we identify our individuality. When we have that improved awareness, self-awareness of who we are, we actually kind of just know our likes and dislikes. We know what works with us. So being aware of ourselves really builds that, is a key component of our self-improvement. When you look at making improvements of other areas with our self-awareness, it helps us to utilize where our current personal strengths are. And when we utilize and build upon our current personal strengths, we use those to work and build forward in other personal strengths. So it's keeping in with that personal awareness, using our strengths, and that is a positive part of building our improvement. If I cannot find what I'm good at, it's not going to be a very big motivator, which therefore I'm not really going to get a lot of improvement. Look at you guys helping me. When we have made a decision to embark upon some sort of area that we want to self-improve, we are identifying and utilizing decision-making skills. So it's really getting us down into utilizing our brain, kind of dissecting ourselves, and kind of working to decide, is this more meaningful or is that? So all of these 4 components here of benefits are very interconnected. When you work in and gain a sense of meaning and purpose, it kind of goes back to that wellness wheel. When we look at, is my financial life meaningful and purpose and providing the sense of purpose and fulfillment that I'm looking for? Am I wanting more in my environment or building up my intellectual skills? So identifying what's meaningful and gives us that sense of purpose is really deep down inside. It's identifying our personal values. When we identify our personal values, we utilize our decision-making skills. And that is working towards and building upon our strengths. so there's even more. So we even have more benefits. So when we build we build our personal clarity and focus upon that self-improvement. We get to see clearly and identify where to make those improvements. So it's our choices through whatever it is that we're looking at. We may, if you think about being on a basketball team, we may choose to make self-improvements because we have, we've seen or we're compared to other people. And so when you look at improving our skills, it's going to make our game more pleasant because that's been meaningful to us. And so we're focusing on our skills that we already have. When we increase our distress tolerance, it's that ability to work through very stressful or uncomfortable situations. We face these daily sometimes, we get into uncomfortable situations, and by engaging in self-improvement tasks, it throws you even more into an uncomfortable situation. We're outside of our comfort zone. And so being able to be in those uncomfortable situations and seeing that we have been successful and that we made it through, we may have had a lot of anxiety and our minds may not have been able to really function very well. But when we take a step back and use that self-awareness, we're able to see that, wow, look at these skills I've used. I've improved myself in some aspect, and therefore that tolerance and that ability to work through that uncomfortable situation leads me to feel more empowered to continue to move through and improve my abilities in further stressful or potentially stressful situations. And personal motivation, just listening to all this, wow, I'm successful and things are improving, those words are very positive. And when we have that personal positivity feeling, we're charged, we're energized, and that all of those build up our motivation. We look at having that motivation gets that ball rolling. It's like, wow, I want to keep doing this. This feels great. And when we feel great inside, that's going to improve our relationship within ourselves and our relationships with other people. When we have confidence that we have been improving, we're making adjustments and we're making changes to better any aspect of ourselves, our relationship feels better to ourselves. And then we have more awareness and improved relationships with those in our lives. So I just made this little collage of just several different self-help books that have been out there. You may be familiar with some of these books. Some of them I have already kind of talked about, and others are things that I have actually purposely read just to further improve my ability to provide interventions and work with other people. And then some of these authors are people I will be talking about. But a lot of these are really empowering books and good resources for us to kind of look at. I also think exploring a self-help and these different philosophies, they introduce us to new ways of thinking, but also it helps us kind of like, wow, I like how this person thinks. This helps me kind of validate my thinking and help build my skills up, but it can also be one of those really putting us out of our comfort zone where, hey, you know, it's like I am improving and I'm learning different perspectives on how to see myself, increasing my self-awareness. So just a few colorful things to look at or investigate. So the other part, and the biggest part, is our self-acceptance. So this Srini Pillai of Harvard Medical School, I chose his definition: the acceptance of all of our attributes, whether they're negative or positive. And that's a pretty big statement. It's like, yeah, we love to accept our positive parts, and it's very, very hard to look at those negative parts. It's also kind of hard to say, oh, this is positive and that this is negative, because it's how we look and view at them. But I look at our positive is where we're comfortable, where we're succeeding. And the negative parts are things that we truly don't like, and we can just leave them and ignore them or work on that part of improvement. So the whole part of self-acceptance, according to Srini, who, as I said, is from Harvard, he is a trained psychiatrist and a brain researcher. He's the one who wrote the book Tinker, Dabble, and Try. So all of his research works on bringing our head and our heart together. And he has really been researching that low self-acceptance as a result of a combination of reasons, but the basic core part gets down into our self-esteem, which, you know, our self-esteem is built by that positively affirming or lack of affirming environment during our formative years. So you look at that self-acceptance of our physical body. You know, it's like, how do we see ourselves? Because that mirror in front of us may be very different on different days also. Parts of our self-acceptance build that self-protection against negative criticism. When we accept parts of ourselves, we can work towards that negative criticism by using and reframing our thinking patterns. It's that ability to find those powerful and descriptive, positive words that help counteract the negative criticisms and other labels that we may impose upon ourselves or that we may have heard from other people in our life. When we believe in our own capabilities, our self-acceptance, our believing in ourselves really increases. So it helps us accept those more negative or the uncomfortable parts of ourselves that we don't like. Utilizing the positivity, recalling positive and successful moments helps to build our abilities to work in future events and hold that personal belief in ourselves. So self-acceptance can be very empowering. And we'll talk about how to keep working on this a little later. So Leon Seltzer, a PhD, who has written an article in the Psychology Today website, he's identified self-acceptance as being embracing all of those facets of ourselves unconditionally. It's accepting those weaknesses or our limitations, and yet having this awareness does not interfere with our ability to fully accept ourselves. So it's letting go of that judgment and our harsh self-criticism. His research has really developed into that self-compassion piece, when we accept our flaws and our mistakes. He looks at self-acceptance as being able to be grateful and thankful for our abilities or that lack of ability. So I kind of bring that into, a real life kind of situation. We work in groups. We may be, called to be worked on a committee. We work in teams, any kind of an environment that people come together and work together. We come in with a self-awareness of who we are and our abilities. And it kind of like, oh, well, I may not be so good at this. Maybe I really love to play tennis, and I'm on a doubles tennis team. And I love to play, but I'm not really good in the backside. So I work with my team player. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we work together. So when you look at coming and working in a committee, you know yourself, you know your abilities. I may not be so good at taking notes. I may be a horrible speller. I may write really slow. And so I might miss things when we're working around and throwing out ideas and brainstorming. But I may have other strengths to bring to that committee. So it's kind of like, I know right here and now where my strengths are. So, and you're very accepting and positive in that kind of a setting. So we appreciate ourselves, and that provides that self-assurance. I'm hoping this makes sense to you all. When we have that and know our skills, we know our abilities, we do have increased self-confidence. So accepting our flaws and looking at these, any of our mistakes, it really brings us into that human component that we, as in my little caption image there, it's like we are the best version of ourselves. We are human. We all make mistakes and we all have flaws. So accepting that and having compassion for ourselves. And when we look at that part of us, then we can kind of embrace who we are and build upon and having the resilience to continue on. So the benefits, continuing on, really help us to, have overall physical health and well-being. When we look at our self-acceptance, and you look at the wellness wheel, it has our physical health and our emotional health. And when we're not very accepting of ourselves, and we might have increased anxiety. Anxiety leads to some of our physical ailments, depression, and other things. Being able to accept who we are and our abilities leads us to having that more positive line of thinking. Identifying those aspects to improve and self-growth. There's that benefit of self-acceptance, is that portion of self-improvement. Self-acceptance is, accepting our values, We are all individuals. We all have different wants, values, needs, and a different sense of fulfillment. So when we are exposed to other areas, we see people who we may want to emulate, and we say, wow, I believe I could work that way and grow and develop those skills. And there again, having a better sense of ourselves, belief in our skills, our self-confidence is built up again, and so are our relationships. So that leads me into this PERMA model. Martin Seligman, Dr. Martin Seligman wrote happiness, I think it's the happiness Now. He's written Flourish, which is where the PERMA model has come from. He is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's the director of the Power of Positive Thinking. So the PERMA model really envelops all of the self-acceptance and our being. When we have positive emotions, when we're feeling good, we're more able to accept who we are, negative and positive, our flaws and what we flourish in. The engagement part, finding flow, being engaged in what is out there in our life, in what's meaningful to us. And of course, the R is our relationships, having that authentic connection with people we choose to have connections with. Having meaning, when we develop a purposeful existence in our life, in any aspect that is, quote, meaningful to us. And then achievement. We are all more positive and more resilient, more motivated when we have a sense of accomplishment. And we're going to look at all of these individually. So the positive emotions. Positive emotions, I, as a rec therapist, utilize those leisure activities because we engage in leisure and recreational activities because it generates positive emotions. We feel good when we're doing things we choose. We choose things that are meaningful to us. We choose things that we're good at. So our leisure and our recreational participations is that area where we might have and identify and become more aware of those positive emotions. Our engagement. My coworker really loves this picture, so that's why you get to engage. But when we engage in life, flow, it's another way of being lost in time. Our leisure activities, things we choose to do, we choose to, if it is to be engaging in reading self-help books, we lose a sense of time. We lose ourselves in that environment, in that activity. You may think for a moment of what you choose to do in your leisure and how we get so engrossed in that activity, we lose a sense of time. We lose a sense of ourselves, and we just become one with that, what we are doing. It's a very mindful place to be in the present moment, and it's considered flow. Musicians find it all the time. Those, they talk a lot about that with rock climbers. We might do that when we're, building little models, or if we're crafting. So we get that flow through those sense of activities. are positive relationships. When we have relationships with people we choose, relationships that build our sense of self, that accept us as well, and that really, you can think about positive relationships with those people who are also out there supporting you in your quest for self-improvement. They're those motivators. Positive relationships, maybe your support people, the team players, our life partners. We may have them in our coworkers. Positive relationships are those people who build us up. We have those more positive experiences and thoughts. I hope that makes sense because my cute little R is very electrified. They're very positive and bright. Finding a sense of meaning. That gets back into what is meaningful for us. We can look at the wellness wheel. We can get into our core values. What's valuable to me? And when we look at what's meaningful to us, we can, one of those easy places is how do we choose to spend our free time? Who do we choose to spend our time with? Where are we spending our time? Are we finding a sense of meaning and purpose in all parts of our life? And if you step back and look and use some mindfulness skills, you can see that we are engaging and finding meaning and sense and purpose that's building ourselves up. It's got that self-esteem, our self-confidence, our self-worth, which all builds into that self-acceptance. Accomplishment. When we have that sense of accomplishment, think about, hiking. When we hike to the top of a mountain, we feel a sense of accomplishment. We sit down, we become mindful and meditative, soaking in all of that part of what we've just accomplished. When we start engaging and finding and identifying what we want to improve, and we achieve that level and goal, we feel a sense of accomplishment. And therefore, it builds our sense of resilience. So the PERMA model. Whoops. So those are my resources. But if we think about how do we achieve all of these things, how do we get back to the belief in our capabilities? How do we protect ourselves against negative criticism? And I'm going to slide back through the PERMA model, because when we're taking care of ourselves, and you can kind of think about this, when I'm eating well, getting my sleep, when my social relationships are together, when I'm physically exercising, my physical body feels better, I'm working, I have that sense of accomplishment. When we look at the whole model of how to be in a more positive state, it really goes back into our wellness wheel. We're more capable of managing in difficult situations. We're more resilient, and we are able to accept more and build upon our personal strengths of who we are as a person. And that is really my PowerPoint and what I have to say today about accepting yourself and improving and having that motivation to kind of work with. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I want to thank you, Christine, as we have questions roll in. I think that was a wonderful discussion about just exactly that, finding that balance. Looks like we're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat box if you're able to see that.
I am not able to right now. I guess if I move this, yeah. Okay, I am, thank you. Because I want you to know, everyone, this really put me out of my comfort zone. So I survived.
Oh, and you did wonderful.
Despite all of this technical difficulty, one day I will improve my skills.
And me too. It seems like something happens every single day with my technology.
It does, doesn't it? Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to put this presentation forward to you, and I hope you all have a great and accepting day of yourself.
Thank you so much. And we hope to see you soon.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.